everybody. Jen here with my co-host Carrie. Thanks for joining us again. We're here to talk about some things that I'm kind of excited about because I feel like this is really sometimes where the rubber hits the road with a lot of chronically ill people. And so we wanted to talk about how mold, parasites, and biofilms play a role in illness, chronic illness. It doesn't have to necessarily be chronic though. And for those of you, maybe you might not have heard of such thing as a mold exposure, or you thought parasites are just in third world countries, or you're like, what the heck are biofilms? So we want to just take today to talk a little bit about these because we really feel like they have a huge presence, and sometimes they're very hidden. And this can be the link if no one can seem to find a fix for you. So, um, yeah, we're just going to chat today about each of these and how they affect, illness, how they affect wellness, because I don't think they're talked about enough. I know in the functional medicine world, obviously, we do hear these terms, but how and why, maybe we'll get into a little bit more today, because I know for a fact in mainstream medicine, these just aren't something that are addressed. Right, Carrie?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anybody tell me, well, my doctor told me that I had biofilms. I mean, it's like they just really weren't trained to look at some of these root causes, and so that from their lens, they're not going to be looking for these things. But really, and we'll kind of explain how these all of these really throw off the immune system, and that is just kind of why they wreak havoc over time on the body, is because they really put you in immune dysfunction, which causes a lot of ripple effects. So Jen is good at
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, right, which leads to mitochondrial dysfunction, which leads to energy problems, which, yeah, go just it's
Right.
a
I mean,
domino.
and it's like everybody's tired, and that could be for a variety of reasons. It's not just this, but this
Right.
is a slow drain on your immune system over time. It's not necessarily something, that is, I guess it works a little bit differently in that way. It's not like an acute thing. It's more of like an ongoing chronic underlying thing that just is this, like I said, it's like a slow leak, I guess.
Right. But I feel like nowadays, now with, in the functional medicine world, the kind of boom of fen-ben with ivermectin is kind of getting some traction. I feel like people are starting to see the importance of some of these things, especially parasites, and mold is getting a little bit bigger, obviously. So I
Yep.
feel like it's starting to get some traction, maybe.
Right.
Um, but it's just not given enough attention, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I will say, sometimes people are they only focus on detoxing and some of these things. And there's a lot more that goes along with that story, too. So
Of
I guess
course.
sometimes we live in extremes, right? It's like somebody doesn't even take it into account, and then others, that's all they focus on. And it's really neither of those. It's right, they do play a role, but there's more to the story. So we just kind of wanted to start off by explaining sort of each one of these three things that we've chosen to kind of talk about today. The first being mold. Mold is something that obviously we've heard of, but like, what does it do to your system, and why is it something that we're starting to hear more about, and that people can get really sick if they've been exposed to mold? Or why do some people have two different, like can have two people in the same house, and one person gets really sick and the other one doesn't? That's also something that we can kind of talk about. So mold it's just an aggravator to your system. It's a toxin. It really gets in your system, and just basically it drains your energy. It throws your immune system off because your immune system's trying to deal with it, but it doesn't really have a good way of doing that. And so it really just puts your nervous system into action mode. If you've heard us talk about that, and more so into that sympathetic dominant nervous system, mold can do that by itself. It also causes a lot of inflammation, and that's something that we hear a lot about. And sometimes we just always feel like we need to be fighting inflammation, but we try to look at what is the root of inflammation. And sometimes it is mold for clients, or sometimes it's just one of the reasons that people have chronic inflammation.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize that if you do have some sort of other chronic thing, for instance, I do have mold, and I always blamed all of my symptoms on Lyme, which, mold can be very insidious, and so you don't notice it.
Yeah.
And for me, anyway, I think mold was a bigger piece of my health problem than I thought.
Yeah.
So you have to, one is if you had any leaks, water leaks, you have drywall in your basement, you probably have mold, but is to really look and see if you have any visible mold, obviously. And then if you suspect issues, related to mold, you have symptoms specifically relating to mold, you might have to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And so we'll try to provide some resources for mold, especially in the show notes and the description of this video. So that you can kind of have a starting place, because to be honest, mold is a very big topic that seems super intimidating once you start looking into it. Everybody
Yeah.
has a different opinion. It's just a lot, and we know because like we're in this space. So hopefully we can point you to some good resources on that. Mold also, before I move on, is something that, like Jen said, sometimes it goes undetected. It's like you have these symptoms, and so we're trying to kind of see what's going on. But especially if you've done a lot of the other things to heal and your body's just not healing, or it's just not really responding, then you always have to look to see if there's mold, because that is one reason why you wouldn't be responding to treatment, or you just have this unexplained inflammation or pain or whatever it might be. Hopefully that makes sense from that standpoint. Um, the next thing that we wanted to chat about is parasites, and we've definitely discussed parasites before. I do think it's for sure being more talked about widely, even in the conventional space probably. But it's definitely not just a third world problem. I mean, we're exposed to parasites all the time, and so it's not to evoke fear of let's try to stay away from parasites. Right? Parasites are just part of our natural makeup, just like virus, bacteria, these types of things. It's not like we're going to just try to eliminate them from our surroundings. It's not possible. But we really need to look at, okay, why are they a problem? Are they overgrown? Are they, do they have a environment in our body that is allowing them to thrive? If so,
Right.
why
That's
is
key.
that? We
Right.
can't just detox parasites all day, every day, because that's what some people get really into the mindset of, well, I'm just going to detox all the time. And not that we don't need to do that, maybe, one or two times a year, like just as kind of like a great best practice. But if you never look at why they're allowing to thrive in your body, then you're really just going to be chasing symptoms, chasing your tail.
Right. You have to create an environment where parasites can't thrive. And that's really your goal. Now, of course, you're going to easily pick up parasites, as Carrie said. Unfortunately, you go out to eat, or, we talked about this, grab public door handles. I mean, it's just inevitable. And you do need to do those probably quarterly, but, really focusing on, alkalizing the large intestine. But yeah, again, they're everywhere. There's protozoa, flukes. They can be in the livers, the lung, they could be everywhere. So,
Yeah.
again, it's just something that is not talked about, I think, enough, as well as the biofilms.
Yeah.
It's not something that really mainstream, and really, it's hard because they'll look at labs and think, oh, the labs look okay. But we know in our experience when we start giving some biofilm disruptors. So let's step back for a second. So biofilms are literally this protective layer that microform. It's like a slime it's like a covering. It's like a tent. They make a tent for themselves under this slime so that the immune system can't detect that they're there. And so the immune system doesn't do anything because it doesn't quote unquote see them. And so, what we have found, especially if people are needing chronic immune support, or they've been on immune support for 4 or 5 months and they're still needing immune support, that's kind of, or even 3 or 4 months, my antennas, sort of go up and go, there's probably a biofilm here. So we go in and start using some biofilm disruptors, and all of a sudden their labs change, right? Their CBC, their differential changes because now the body is seeing what's under those biofilms. So they're very often missed. but they can keep the body in a chronic inflammatory stress state. So this is something that I would say a lot of people probably have. And so if you're needing constant support for a certain organ or organ system, you might look into some biofilms.
And I, I was always under the impression that basically, okay, they make these protective sacs because they want to evade the immune system, like basically stay alive in your system. But your immune system actually does sense that they're there, but they can't kill them. So that's how they kind of can deplete your immune system and sort of throw off your immune system, because your immune system knows that they're there, but they're in those sacs, so they can't get to them. And so when we give these biofilm disruptors, it's actually breaking open those sacs and then, kind of releasing what's in there. And so that can definitely change lives. And it can make you feel worse in the short term, right?
Right.
Hopefully, you're working with somebody that is doing this in a strategic way, so that whenever you do break open biofilms, then you go after the things that are in there and have, your drainage pathways are open too. You definitely want to
Yeah.
make sure of that.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, like, this is an evasion, kind of tactical by these bugs. And these bugs are inherently smart. This isn't the only kind of um, tactical thing that they do. Some of them will literally downregulate some of our inflammatory pathways, not to alert the immune system that they're even there. So, some of them literally change their DNA makeup once they are intracellular, again, not to alert the body that they're there. So these buggers are smart. So, they're constantly evolving, not to, be detected and to, procreate and keep going.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're really smart.
Yep. But we're smarter, hopefully.
So we've already talked a lot about how they dysregulate the immune system, and that can definitely lead to like autoimmune issues over time, for sure. That can play into it. There's
That's
the gut.
probably the number one thing. I just want to say, like, autoimmunity is immune dysregulation. That's what
Yeah,
it is. It's that the immune system has lost its, basically intelligence, and that's what happens. And so that's because that innate system has been bombarded for so long. So really, some sort of immune support or regulation, whether you're addressing parasites or whatever it is, should be ongoing, especially as we age.
and it makes me sad whenever people go, and they've been diagnosed with some type of autoimmune issue, and they basically say like, "There's nothing we can do. This is just the way it is. You need to take this medication, or you're just gonna have to live with these symptoms." And it's just not true, right? Your
Right.
your immune system is again kind of it's just needs some help, because it's been dysregulated for so long. Now it's just confused, and now it's attacking your own body, which is not normal. So that's just a plug for, if you've ever been told that there's nothing you can do, that couldn't be further from the truth. um,
Absolutely. No,
yeah.
yeah. The
So
body's innately intelligent,
yeah,
right? It's called compensatory physiology. I know I've mentioned that before. It's trying to compensate and, address whatever is going on. So the process is intelligent. It's just now that there's immune derangement, it's lost its kind of intelligence in the sense that it just needs to be redirected and re-educated.
right. Your body just, it's not broken, it's not
Right.
messing up. It's really just trying to survive. And
Right.
so we just have to see what's causing some of this immune dysfunction, and give your body what it needs to do what it was already trying to do, and just kind of peel back those layers. I mean, that's what it needs to get to the actual root of what's going on. Um, so that's definitely a huge part of this is the immune system dysregulation, and then autoimmunity. There's definitely the gut brain connection that can get thrown off from these things. Anxiety, brain fog, mood swings. I mean, that's huge if you think about neural inflammation and how that's playing in, from how it disrupts the gut, maybe leaky gut. That's definitely a huge part of mold, parasites, biofilms, if you have those going on.
And it's a two-way process, right? So if the brain's inflamed, the gut's inflamed. If the gut's inflamed, the brain's inflamed, and vice versa. So
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
gut's
Gut
huge.
brain
Gut's
connection.
made to do everything, right?
Right. Right.
But the thing with these three, they're not like, especially parasites. I think a lot of people think they're only in your gut. That
Wrong. Right.
they can really be anywhere. Same thing with biofilms, and of course, mold just affects your entire body. Definitely, a lot of inflammation in the brain can come from mold for sure. Um, this just thinking about a ripple effect, this can affect your hormones. It for sure throws off your minerals. If your immune system is dysregulated or dysfunctional and you have all this inflammation going on, you just burn through minerals so much more quickly because your nervous system is just always on edge. Even if it's like low key on edge, you just burn through minerals super quickly. And so that obviously affects how your cells function and how your organs function. So that's a huge thing that we see, especially with mold, is that you just can't keep up with your minerals because you're just burning through them so quickly. Um, yeah. Anything else you want to add kind of to?
No, I think that the hormonal, so, hormonal disruption, I just want to spend a minute on because these things obviously lead to hormonal dysregulation. Like everybody is attacking hormonal dysregulation as the problem. That's really the symptom. And
Right.
so, irregular cycles, fatigue, PMS, those are hormonal issues that relate to whatever is going on. And so all the things that we talk about, like blood sugar and light, and, you know, now we're talking about mold parasites and biofilms, those are the root causes of your hormonal disruptions. And so I just want to emphasize that if you are seeing somebody who is just focusing on hormones, that's not root really problem. That's not a root problem, so to say.
Sure. I think a lot of stuff is blamed on hormones, especially as we get older, right? For sure in the
Well,
conventional
that's different. I mean, obviously, yeah, menopause is a hormonal
Sure, but I'm
related.
just like a lot of stuff is blamed on hormones just because, if you're a woman, I mean, obviously those are playing into it, but they're not the root cause
Right.
of why you're feeling the way
That's
that
not where you start.
you're. Yeah, that's not where you
Right.
start.
Right.
These things cause your hormones to get off. So, and honestly, hormones are one of the last things that kind of get back in balance when you're thinking about root cause because your body doesn't prioritize that. It's trying to prioritize survival, and you don't need hormones to survive. So, that's another thing too. We have to be a little bit patient when it comes to hormones, but
Yeah.
that's a whole topic, right?
Right. Right. Well, do you want to just mention like the roadmap and how it works? Because I think that's important
Mhm.
for people.
Yeah. So there's definitely an order of operations when you're thinking about, we're talking about mold, parasites, biofilms, like all of these things play together. So I think it is important to note, like, how do you start addressing some of these when maybe you can't even differentiate what's going on? You kind of have a mixture of all of these, which is super common. Um, so you always want to start with, are your drainage pathways open? Because whenever you start at this sort of progression, you want to make sure what you're doing and the what you're kind of opening up, if you're opening up these biofilms, which is really one of the first places you start, that your body can get rid of it. And I think that a lot of times that's either missed, or people are just maybe giving drainage support that's not really supporting the organs and the cells at a cellular level. That's something that's really important. So that's why we always look at minerals. We're going to give, we're going to focus on nutrition because that's what feeds the cells and feeds the organs to work properly, instead of just giving direct detox support. That's a little bit of a different way to approach it, but we've seen it work a lot better long term, especially to address the root cause. So you just want to make sure that that's in place first, and that your body has the energy to detox. Because if you're asking it to do more and you're so fatigued, that's not a good combination, right? I see that a lot too. I try to do that with myself, for sure, in the wrong order. So you want to start with, are your detox pathways open? Have you sort of filled in some deficiencies? And then you want to start breaking open biofilms, because in these sacs, I know we've just talked about mainly parasites as it relates to biofilms, but there could be mold, metals, bacteria, viruses, that all of those things make biofilms, and they usually like to coincide together. So sometimes you don't know what's going to come out whenever you open up the biofilms, but typically you want to do biofilms, parasites, because parasites hold on to all these things too. Like, if your body is, if you have an overabundance of parasites, they're there for a reason. Um, and a lot of times that reason is toxicity, right? If you have a lot of toxins that are floating, your body is trying to survive, so it's going to allow parasites to hang around because they absorb all those things. So again, your body's not messing up, but we have to kind of figure out what's the main issue of why your body's holding on to all these things.
This may be a squirrel, but I just want to mention something, and it's a concept that is very, very, I think talked about in the naturopathic world, and that is the germ theory versus the terrain theory. And
Yeah.
so, what that means is, if the terrain is healthy, so the body is healthy, it's well fed, it's draining, there is no need for cleanup. Okay. So cleanup is the germ theory. It's the parasites. It's the bugs. It's like what came first, right? The chicken or the egg? um, and we're indoctrinated, of course, with Louis Pasteur's concept, which is it's the bug.
Yeah.
But Dr. Béchamp and Louis Pasteur were actually good friends at one point. Béchamp's like, Louis, you got it all wrong. It's the terrain. If the terrain's healthy, there's no bugs. And Dr. Pasteur was like, no, 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 it's the bug. We got to just get rid of the bugs. And then, so, ultimately, as we've always talked about, you want the terrain to be healthy, and you won't need the bugs for cleanup.
Yeah.
And so that's why we talk about drainage and foundations first, so you have the energy, so you can rebuild, that sort of thing. Sorry, that was a little bit of a
No,
squirrel,
no,
but
I think that was perfect. Thank you so much. I mean, it makes sense. And obviously, the terrain theory did not win out.
no, the terrain theory definitely did not win. The germ theory definitely won. But I think, more and more people are understanding, because of root cause and those sorts of things that, if the terrain's healthy, obviously, um, yeah, the bugs won't show up.
Right.
So do you want to talk a little bit about why conventional medicine, like labs, as far as just symptoms and standard testing? I mean, I can talk about that too. I think I
Yeah.
did mention, obviously.
Sorry, I just wanted to finish the whole order of operations just
Oh,
really
I'm
quick.
so sorry.
No, 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 you're fine, you're fine. So we have drainage first for sure. Then we have biofilms, parasites. Then we have mold and metals. And then you want to do Lyme and co-infections if there are any of those. And then viral is the end, so that kind of the end of the roadmap. But that order of operations is super important if you want to actually get to the root of what's going on. And some people, you'll hear, let's do a heavy metal cleanse, or let's just, do parasite work or whatever. You really want to, if you want to do it correctly and not always be chasing your tail, you really want to think about doing it in that order. So you go
Yeah.
ahead though with where you were going. That was the
Well,
next.
and just let me expand on that. I know we're getting a little bit chatty, but I think sometimes too we don't do things in that order. It's because the body is prioritizing, and the body might know something that we don't. And so sometimes obviously that order is a little bit different. So don't be, upset for you're like, oh, we didn't do parasites and we're doing this, So sometimes, symptom relief is in order, or the body is just calling for something else.
Yeah, and throughout the whole roadmap, you always want to give support wherever the body's wanting it. That
Right.
doesn't mean you're not going to do the whole roadmap, but you kind of right. We're trying to both symptom treat and go to the root cause, and so yeah, for sure. Glad you mentioned that.
So, putting this all together, conventionally, if you feel like you're not getting better, or, you have physician fatigue, normal labs, or I should say, labs will sometimes look normal with these, or, they might not be a subtle enough shift in the labs.
Yeah,
Mold and parasites don't even often show up on tests, especially because of biofilms. Biofilms aren't even really addressed in mainstream. It's just not in, as Carrie said, that it's not something they look for in their toolbox or address. And then you add in, the emotional impact of I'm frustrated because I'm not healing. I'm feeling gaslit by the physicians. I'm discouraged because I'm not getting better. So, we just want to encourage you, if you've ever felt like something's off, it doesn't feel right, and no one's finding answers, like keep digging. There is an answer.
yeah, and now with all the information out there and people talking more about this in the holistic space, sometimes we try to hold off and like do a parasite cleanse on our own, or do a heavy metal cleanse or whatever it might be. And not that those things are bad, but they can, if you don't do it the right way, you can have symptoms. And so honestly, it's best to work with somebody, just to see where you're at specifically so that you can have specific support so that you have the best experience and you actually do what you're trying to do, and not, because a lot of times you can stir up something and then you're going to feel worse. And yeah, it's just, it can be a hot mess, truly.
Right, especially as we talked about, if you don't have the literal energy, you don't have the cellular
Yeah,
energy to detox. It takes a lot of energy to detox. And if
guys.
you're minerally deficient, your nervous system's dysregulated, you can't sometimes do that. You'll
That's where
actually
a
feel
lot of
worse.
people are,
Right, right.
right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. We see it a lot. So,
if you
yeah.
have any questions, let us know. I mean, I get that this is a sometimes a confusing topic, so we love questions. Um, if you want to also take our quiz, you can, especially if you have a lot of fatigue, you can at least see and get a good idea of where to maybe focus some of your efforts. That might be a good starting place for you. But we always are happy to do calls, inquiry calls. If you are really just super frustrated with where you're at and you just want some direction, we'd be happy to chat with you. So we'll have those links and things to for you in the show notes.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and if it's not you or if it's someone you love or,
Yeah,
someone popped into your mind, please pass on this podcast to them. We'd love to help them.
thanks, guys. See you in the next one.